Hey, I'm not great at these intense conversations, you know. You know I care about you, right?
I really care about you too.
Well, it's just like things have been changing.
Change?
You know, when a relationship, it can start as one thing, but then become something different.
Different? No. I will not be broken up with again! Let me help you out with your intense conversation.
I sense anger. I had no idea you felt that way. Listen, 5'7" is a very adequate height. Staying in your parents' basement, that's a great way to save money. I am not cheap. I tried being vegan. Isaac Newton was 5'7". Those are my feelings being tap danced on. I had no idea you could be so hurtful. You sing all these mean things to me, and you don't like my music? I can't believe all this. I don't even know.
Well, I think I've said it all.
I don't even know.
Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No reason I came here.
Oh! Oh! Congratulations, guys! Oh, you're speechless. That means you nailed it. Guys, can I take your picture? What a perfect moment.
Well, good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to Lighthouse Church, and my name is Jamie. I'm one of the pastors on team. And let's give a massive round of applause and welcome to all of our online church right now who are watching at home, in work, on a train, obviously not in a plane. If you're driving, please keep 2 eyes on the road and 2 hands on the steering wheel. But yeah, we're so glad that you are here because today we kick off a brand new series called Me and My Big Mouth. Now, I know it's not the most welcoming thing to say to someone when you first come into a church service, but I want to address you and your big mouth. And before you say, hang on a second, that's very judgmental, understand when I say you, it's inclusive of all of us, because here's one thing we have in common. No matter what country we come from, what background, religiously or unreligiously, irreligiously, whether we vote a political way, whether we support a certain team, whether we're supporting Italy tonight or England tonight, wherever we are in the divide of life, the one thing we all have in common is sometimes we say things in anger, in passion, in spite, right? And those things come back to haunt us. And we wish, if only there was a way to rein in those words, if only there's a way to stop putting our foot in our mouth, the quality of our lives will be so much better. Come on, I'm speaking to those of you who are married. I'm speaking to those of you who want to last long enough to be hopefully married one day. To those with kids, those who are kids, those who want to have a career. Here, if we don't get in control of what comes out of our mouth, it can be destructive. And the good news is this: there is help and there is hope. So for the next 4 weeks or so, we're going to dive into this. We're going to ask the questions, what principles are there in Scripture? What does God say about this? And what does His Word have that can help us live more fulfilled lives? And like always, if you want to track along, all of today's notes are in the Bible app by YouVersion. So if you have the Bible app, you simply go to More, click on Events, find Lighthouse Church Dublin, and today's notes will be there. And if you have never downloaded the Bible app, do yourself a favor. It is an amazing resource. It is full of all sorts of studies that you can do for all sorts of topics and issues, and it's really worthwhile having. Now, to kick off the message and kick off the series, I want to ask you a question. And the question is this: have you ever experienced the frustration of being in what you think is a conversation with someone, but very quickly you realize they're not talking to you, they're talking at you? Have you ever experienced the frustration of being talked at, not talked to? It's that sense of where you think you're having a dialogue, but the other person's clearly having a debate. I mean, you are the UN. You've turned up to try create some sense of peace, but they're dropping nuclears on you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you think you've come in with goodwill on the same level to try to restore the relationship, but it becomes very quickly apparent to you that the other person is not interested. Anyone ever been there before? And let's be honest for a second, because, hey, we're in church. Our culture has never been more divided right now. I mean, people in our world is just too busy on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, in the news, online. Our culture is too busy talking at each other than talking to each other. Listen to me. We have beliefs. We have values. We have biblically based values that shape who we are as Christians. But if you're in this room and you're not a Christ follower, maybe you believe the opposite of what we believe. Maybe your views on things that we have views on are different. That's okay, because you're welcome in this place. You know why? Because we're not intimidated by people with different opinions or different cultures or different belief systems. God made us diverse. And obviously our hope and prayer is that every one of us here in the room, watching online, that we will be able to experience his love and come into a personal relationship with him. But if we're threatened by each other's differences and so focused on talking at each other that we can't talk to each other, then there's no way that we can be friends. Because rather than having conversations, we're too busy having arguments. And I want to talk into that. I want to speak into that for you in your life, for all of your primary relationships, whether it's you as an employer, how you talk to your staff, or you're the employee, how you talk to your managers, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's in school, whether it's on the street, whether it's even how you communicate on social media, right? However we communicate, I want you to be able to be a person that can have a conversation and not let everything fall or simply slip into an argument. So today's message, part one, is called Quick to Listen, Slow to Speak. And this isn't just the title, this is actually the main point of the message. And as we're going to see in a second, it comes straight from Scripture. But I want to help you. I want to give you kind of a sticky takeaway, okay? In other words, I want to give you a metaphorical memory thing that will help you keep this in mind all week long. Now here's what happens. When we find ourselves in conflict, when we feel like someone's talking at us and not to us, and our opinions or our worldview is not being respected, what do? We close up, right? The walls come up, the guard towers, flaming arrows fired out, we're pouring tar, we're sending cannonballs, we're pressing a nuclear bomb button. I mean, you have attacked the wrong person. Do you know what I'm saying? I was just asking you who you're supporting tonight. Do you know what I'm saying? Nuclear! I mean, bang! Hit that button. Attack. Right? We get defensive. We close up. And very often, this is usually the case, the people that love you, okay, are for you. Yeah. The people that love you are for you. Yeah. And it's one thing to go nuclear on people you don't even know on the street. You get in an argument about traffic decision or whatever. But it's another thing to go nuclear on those that you love. And very often, let's be honest, when it comes to me and my big mouth, who are the people we hurt the most? Those we love, right? And so we have to understand that rather than clamming up and shutting up and walls up, we have to open up, which is really tough. You know what I'm saying? It's really tough it's very tough to be able to find the ability to really listen to people, especially when you don't like what they're saying, especially when it's true, especially when it's true about you. And so, just like everyone hold their fist, everyone say closed fist, okay, everyone online, closed fist. So when we're in defensive mode, we're ready to fight, you know what I'm saying? The old fighting Irish, you know what I'm saying? Put them up there, son, come on. You understand what I'm saying? We're ready to fight, okay? But fighting is not how we build relationships. Fighting is how we destroy relationships. So here's what we do. First hand, we're quick to listen. Come on, right hand, really fast. Quick to listen online. Quick to listen, slow to speak. Come on, 1, 2, 3. We're quick to listen, slow to speak. Sit with your hands open. Don't you just feel the revs? Like when you close your fists and clench them, do you feel the adrenaline? Do you feel the energy? Do you feel a tension in your body? But the minute you go, quick to listen, slow to speak, it's like, I feel kind of relaxed right now. I could stand like this for a while. It feels like I feel Italian all of a sudden. Mamma mia, you know what I'm saying? What's going on? What are you doing? You know what I'm saying? It's like, I just feel good like this. And so what we're taught with today is how do we live lives that are quick to listen and slow to speak. Why? Because here's the truth. We all say, don't we, that, in relationships, one of the most important parts of our communication is that we're heard, right? We want to be heard. I mean, what really drives arguments? When you step back and look at them from as an objective standpoint as you can, what you say is, I just feel like I wasn't heard, right? And being heard is really important, right? That people actually care enough to hear us. But if you drill a bit deeper, what's really at the root of being heard? It's also the idea that I want to be heard so I can be understood. understand that when we're in conversation and we have different opinions, okay, it's not that I want you to agree with everything I'm saying. I want you to hear and understand why I believe what I believe, how I see what I see, and how I see it according to how I see the world. But when you shut me down and I feel like you're not hearing me and therefore I'm not understood, well then I'm going to reciprocate with the same kind of aggression, the same kind of strategy, the same kind of reaction. But if we want to have flourishing, healthy, God-honoring relationships, whether it's marriage or friends or in the workplace, or just in our culture, like I said, referencing again online conversations, then I want to submit to you today that we need to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Now, some of you are thinking, well, I mean, that sounds great, but like if I'm quick to listen and slow to speak, then they're going to keep on talking, right? And that's the problem, is they keep on talking. But trust me, if you track with me for the next few minutes, hopefully there's something that I will say that will convince you that the key to having long-lasting, healthy, God-honoring relationships is not to be quick to speak and slow to listen. Right? Because let's be honest, that's how we got here, isn't it? We got here. Our relationships are where they are in the negative sense because we were so quick to speak and so slow to listen. And I think especially for those in the room who grew up in this country, those of us who would say we're Irish, this is particularly true because we are so witty. Come on, we're so freaking fast. I mean, we've thought about a rebound before the person even finished their sentence. I mean, we're full on responding mid-sentence. You know what I'm saying? Or if you've been married for a long time, you know what they're saying is how you know it's going to end, and you're already retaliating before their word even hits you. And you know what? It doesn't work. It doesn't work in the marriage, it doesn't work in the family, it doesn't work in work, it doesn't work in culture, it doesn't work in the government, it doesn't work online because nobody's listening. And so the question we're asking is, how do we listen better? And so to help us answer that question, we're going to turn to God's Word. We're going to look at the book of James, chapter 1, verse 19. Again, the notes are in the Bible if you want to track along. Just a few verses. And we're going to try to figure out how can we do this better. Now, important information. James, the author of this book, is a really interesting character because James stood out in church history for his sense of integrity. The church fathers called him James the Just, okay? James the Just. The idea of being integral, the idea of being congruent, the idea that we should live out what we preach was very important to James. And if you read his letter, that comes across very clearly. And we'll be referencing it this week and next week. But the other cool thing about James is James has a famous brother, Bob Geldof. No, Jesus, okay? James is the brother of Jesus. What's so interesting about James' story is when Jesus was on the earth preaching the gospel with his 12 disciples and healing the sick and doing all the things Jesus did, James was not there. James was not a follower of Jesus, right? And we can kind of empathize with why. Because if your sibling, if your brother or sister woke up one morning and said, listen, I am the Son of God and Savior of the world, bow down and worship me, you'd be like, what? I'm going to punch you, man. I'm going to wreck you. What do you mean? I mean, I watch you sleep. There's nothing godly about the way that you sleep. I mean, you hardly even brush your teeth. I mean, there's no way you're the Son of God. And so James, very skeptical of Jesus' identity the whole way through his ministry. But when James watched with his mother, his brother be beaten and flogged and crucified and killed and buried, and then a few days later had a barbecue on the beach with him, it became pretty apparent that Jesus was in fact the Son of God and the Savior of the world. And something happened when James encountered the resurrected Jesus that changed his power and changed his life. And that's what happens. People aren't Christian because they're born Christian or raised Christian or convinced to be Christian. Why? Because if I can convince you to be one, someone else can convince you not to be one. But when you encounter a resurrected Jesus, that's my story. I wasn't a believer. I wasn't raised in a Christian home. I was kind of antagonistic at best. I was, all for science and against the church and against the Bible. That was all a load of nonsense. Until one time playing rugby in Heidelberg, Germany, the presence of a resurrected Jesus filled my hotel room, ruined my theology, and completely transformed my life. That's what church is about. Church is about encounter, okay? Not indoctrination. It's about encountering the person of Jesus. And so it was James' encounter with a resurrected Jesus that led him to devote his life to sharing the good news, and ultimately he was killed for his faith. And so he writes to the churches in the first century, much like ours, and says in verse 19, my dear brothers and sisters. Now, whenever you see my dear brothers and sisters in Scripture, usually what comes next is going to be very challenging. I'm saying, like, my dear child, wash the dishes, please. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. I love this. Take note. Like, mark this. Write it down. Memorize it. Like, if you're going to sleep, wake back up. This is the most important part of what I'm about to say. Everyone, who? Everyone. I thought it was just men that had a problem with listening. Everyone. I thought it was just teenagers. I thought it was like, everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak. Come on, quick to listen. Come on, online, slow to speak. Everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak. What's he saying? He's saying that when it comes to the context of a relationship, our first priority in any good relationship should be that we prioritize the idea of listening. Practically speaking, what's he saying? He's saying, hey, when you find yourself in a conversation, in a dialogue, it's getting kind of heated, and you're kind of thinking this train is ricketing and rocketing, and there's a chance it's going to come off the rails. What he's saying is, when in doubt, wait and be late. Yeah. Wait and be late. Why? Because being late in your response is better than being early. This is very important. I'll explain why in a second. He's saying, in other words, before you jump to conclusions, because when we jump to conclusions, we jump to condemnations. And I do this all the time, I'll be honest. Like, I quickly jump to a conclusion, and then I say something that's usually condemnatory. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you're watching Ireland versus Japan last week. First half, Japan are on fire, going, man, we are going to lose so bad. These guys are amazing. I mean, it's Banzai. I mean, it's Samurai Sunday in Ireland. We're getting slaughtered. Like, you jump to conclusion before out of your mouth comes a statement, a declaration, okay? Now, it's one thing to make a statement about the day or about a sporting game, whatever, but when it's directed at someone, you're always, you're just like your mother. You want to enter marriage? Just say that over and over again. It's over, man. We say these declarations, and what James is saying is, hey, rather than jumping to conclusions and making kind of condemnatory statements, he's saying, be curious. Come at it from a curious perspective. Now you're thinking, hang on again, this goes back to what I thought a second ago. If I'm curious, right? Because what does curiosity usually express itself in? Questions, right? When we're curious, we ask questions. Maybe you're here and it's your first time, and again, you're very welcome. Or maybe it's your first time online and you're curious, what is this whole church? Why are there people here? I mean, why are there, it's one thing to kind of to say God and church, but why do people come to church in 21st century Ireland? Surely something must be going on. Maybe you're curious as to what that is. And that curiosity leads to questions. Now you're thinking, but if I ask questions, they're just going to keep talking, right? And that's the problem. I want them to shut up and hear what I have to say, because what I have to say matters. But there's the point. What we want others to do for us, they want us to do for them. And you're going to see this is going very quickly. What we want others to do for us, others want the same. And what James is saying is the best way to be heard and understood in the context of a relationship is to hear and understand. It's to be quick to listen and slow to speak. In fact, don't just ask a question, ask 3 questions. Ask multiple questions. I mean, think about this. Parents, those of you who have kids, is this what you want your kids to do? Like, my kids ask the wrong questions. You know what I'm saying? I say, hey, son, can you do me a favor? Can you go load the dishwasher? Why? What? I mean, you're breathing oxygen that I brought you into this world, the food you eat, the clothes that you wear, the bed you sleep in. I mean, what do you mean, why? I mean, I'm juggling this baby, I'm making dinner, you know what I'm saying? The place, like, you live here. I take some responsibility and do the dishwasher. Now listen up, if you're a teenager, let me help you. This is amazing, right? If your parents say, hey, can you do me a favor and cut the grass or load the dishwasher, take the rubbish? Say, no problem. Is there anything else you need me to do? Especially young guys. No problem. I'm going to stop playing my video game for the next 2 hours and I'm available to anything you want. You will literally kill your parents. They will drop dead of a heart attack right there and then. They've never heard the likes of it in their lives. Right? Your parents say, you can't do this, you can't do that. Rather than saying, well, I'm going to say, well, okay, that's an interesting perspective. Help me understand. What really are you saying here, Mom? What really do you want here, Dad? I mean, it'll blow their mind. I mean, think about it. Apply it to marriage. Like you and your wife are arguing because something wasn't done the way she wants to be done, because that's usually how it goes, right? And you have your perspective. You're commenting because it's true. And listen, I'm not start any arguments today. Okay, it's between you and your spouse. But rather than saying, it is the way it is, or this is the way I do, or this is the way I was raised, or my parents, or whatever it is we say in an argument, rather than saying, well, help me understand, honey. How can I do it better? I could just finish the sermon right now and just go home. That's job done. Everyone's saying it just helps some of your marriage right there. But you see, here's the point. The point is that by asking questions, not only do we kind of, we bring down the aggression level, right? We kind of, I can't feel the word, but we kind of decelerate all the kind of emotion. But we also begin to do something. We begin to learn. Because when we listen and our listening becomes hearing and our hearing becomes understanding, all of a sudden something dawns on us. That they actually want the same thing we want. They want to be heard and understood. Which is why James tacks on the last part of the sentence. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Now notice, that's both a result as well as a decision. To make a decision to be slow to become angry is a result of by being quick to listen and slow to speak. We naturally are slow to become angry. So it's kind of a both and. It's a decision of the will to go, I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to lose my temper. I'm going to try to stay calm. But I'm also going to, by being quick to listen, I'm also going to create a scenario where I don't become angry. And again, this is really important because you may think, well, I don't really get angry. I'm not really an angry person. Understand, anger is different. Anger is expressed differently in every single one of our lives. Some of us, we just full on blow up. Come on, where am I blowing up people at? Where are you who just, when you're angry, everyone knows you're angry. You with me? And again, if you're a bit shy and nervous, don't worry. I'm one of those. I come from a family that, listen, when my family are angry, everyone knows they're angry. They don't have to lose the plot completely, like throw furniture. Do you understand what I'm saying? The face just shows it. Some of you are like, oh, that's terrible. But what you do is you let it go inwards, right? You get angry, but you smile. And the person's like, what's up with you? Nothing. You okay? I'm fine. I sense some anger. No, I'm grand. If you want to do what you want to do, you just go do it. But I'm fine. And what happens is it's just like the person blowing up, like their way of kind of gaining control is by aggression, decibels, you know what I'm saying, drama. They're gonna demand your attention by the show. But the person who's quiet and passive aggressive, they're gonna gain control by stringing you along in a car because they want you to ask 1,001 times, what's wrong? What did I say to you? It must be something. Come on, let me make it. I'll buy you a cake. I'll buy you a pony. I'll buy you a house. I'll buy you a Ferrari. What can I do to make it up to you? The point is, you're angry. You're angry. Not all anger is extrovert, okay? And the point is this, whether it's introverted or internalized anger or extroverted and expressed anger, either way, when there's anger in relationships, that usually leads the way to bitterness, and bitterness destroys everything good. And the only way we can avoid this in dialogue is by making a decision. I don't want to get angry. I'm going to be slow. I'm going to hold off for as long as I can. But how do I do that practically? Well, here's a good idea. If I'm quick to listen and slow to speak, right, I'll be slow to become angry. Because I'm seeking to hear, not just talking to be understood. Again, the formula is this. The formula is the longer you listen, the more you learn, and therefore the less angry you'll be. Again, this may shock you. You may be really disappointed that you came all the way to Lighthouse Church today to hear this, because this is as deep as it goes. But here it is. Ready? Number one. Everything everyone does makes sense to them. I know it's bizarre, isn't it? Like what? I mean, that person, everything everyone does makes sense to them. I'll shock you even more. Everything everyone says makes sense to them. And to put it in context of where we are today, everything everyone believes makes sense to them. Which is why in our church everyone's welcome, because everyone has a story and a worldview and a perspective. Now when you say, well, I don't understand why they do say believe, what they do say and believe, understand in your statement is a revelation. Who doesn't understand why? I don't understand why. Therefore, who needs the lesson? Who needs to learn? Them or me? I don't understand why that idiot does things the way he does it. It's me. I don't get it. I don't get why he did that. I don't get why she does that. I don't agree with why. You understand? The onus is on us, not on them. So here's the hint, if I don't know and I'm willing to be quick to listen and slow to speak, then maybe I will learn something. But to do that, like I said, that requires questions, not declarations. Declarations destroy relationships. I mean, have you ever tried going to a job interview and just start declaring things? I am the best worker in the world. You will never have another employee. You are so privileged to have me potentially working on your stuff. In fact, you know what? I'm coming for your job. If I were you, I quit right now because you're not secure, because I'm coming in. I'm taking over this place. When do I start? How's that going to go? Can you imagine going on a date with someone and you're sitting there, candlelight dinner, meal, excited, nervous, and for the whole time, all the person does is tell you everything about how great they are and what they do and why you should love them. I mean, there's no space in a marriage for a person like that because their hubris fills it for both. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a bad idea. It doesn't work. But when you go in with questions, help me understand what really matters in this company. Help me understand what would my job really entail? And what could I bring? How could I help support the vision of this organization? Or if you're someone looking to be married happily, tell me your story. Tell me why are you so passionate? Help me understand why. Questions lead to trust, lead to intimacy. And again, if our culture could be more focused on asking questions rather than making declarations, maybe things wouldn't be as divided as they are. James says, if we want to have healthy, happy, God-honoring relationships, we've got to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and then we'll be slow to become angry. But he continues in verse 20. He says, here's the reason, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. There's the key word, righteousness. That's a big biblical word. What does it mean? The word righteous means to be made right, to be in right standing, to be proven to be right. And again, when we talk about, as we sung today in our song, our Savior displayed on a criminal's cross, and some of you maybe are curious about what does that mean and why did Jesus die on the cross? It's very simple. This is the gospel message, that we as human beings aren't right enough to be right with God. We all have gone our own way like sheep. We've all gone astray, our own choices, our own decisions, our own free will. And God in his love and mercy said, I need to do something to help these people. And so what religion does is religion is man's attempt to build a bridge back to God, right? It doesn't work because whatever we build, it will never be good enough or strong enough or able enough to get to him. But God, in sending Jesus, builds the bridge to us and says no matter what you believe, what you've done, where you're from, what's been done to you, even though you think you're a failure, you're broken, you're disgraced, even though you're ashamed, even though you're lost, even though you're lonely, even though you feel like the world's forgotten you, I see you. I see you. And I love you. And I've made a way. Why? Because Jesus, who is the righteousness of God, became sin so that we who are sinners could be made right with God. That's the good news of the gospel message. Now, James isn't applying it in that way. He's applying it more to kind of a self-righteousness. And self-righteousness is one of the reasons why some of you perhaps, and some of you watching online, have a problem with the church. And self-righteousness is where people, are convinced that they're so good at being right that even God himself will be challenged. You know what I'm saying? Like they're so professional at being religious that somehow gives them the ability or the platform to judge, to criticize, and to put other people down. And James said, hey, if you allow yourself to take up the place of self-righteous in any relationship, it is destructive, right? Because there's something driving that isn't godly. When we have to pretend to be something we're not, there's something going on there. When we're deceiving the ones that we love, when we're inflating facts, when we're covering up the truth, when we're lying to our spouse about our money or accounts, where we were, what we were doing, who we're talking to, when you have to delete your text message thread, when you have a private password for your social media, when you're hiding things from those you love, things are not okay. Things are not okay. And somewhere on the line, it's going to lead to a sense of betrayal, a sense of hurt, a brokenness, and it may cost you their relationship. See, James is saying is that when my life is built on my rightness, I know I'm right. And I want you to know I'm right. And I want everyone to know I'm right. That's the whole thing. I want everyone to see how right I am. And let's be honest, we all in our own ways at certain times can be so stubborn. You know, one of my most endearing qualities is my longevity. I just don't quit naturally. It's the way I was raised. Do you know what another word for that is? Stubbornness. You know, so like, you know, you want to be, connected to someone as a friend or as a spouse. So you know what? They're not going to quit on you, right? But usually that comes with, well, I'm also going to disagree with everything you say just in principle because that's how I'm wired. You know what I'm saying? So with the bad comes the good. And it's so funny because when you become a parent, right, you see these qualities in your kids and you go, oh no, they're going to continue on. I just brought more of it into the world. And I've got, my boys are amazing and they're great. And honestly, despite their stubbornness, they're great kids. But I remember a few years ago, when you were down at my brother, his daughter was getting christened, okay? And so we went down to the christening. It was grand, and we're sitting there in these old pews, and my son is kind of like, slouching and kicking his feet and making noise. Stop doing that. Don't make any noise. And constantly the whole time trying to correct him. And I'm like, and he goes, no, don't be here. Da, da, da. And I'm like, stop being so stubborn. And at one point I got so out of hand that I turned around because I heard some noise, put the photo guys, and this is what I saw. Yeah, I mean, he's like, his ass is in the air in church. I mean, it's not really good. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we're in church in this christening, and my son is full on through the pew making noises. And the thing is this, in his mind, he's right. In his little mind, this is how you should go to church. Anyone care to try that for a few minutes? I mean, in this mind, this is perfectly acceptable, right? But as a parent, I'm saying this is not acceptable. I know you think you're right. I know you want me to know you're right. I know you want everyone to know you're right. But here's the truth. You're just not right, right? And the problem is, when we don't have people in our lives to tell us the truth, we look like this, right? Our life is upside down. Our life is a disaster. And you know what's really scary? One thing I've learned about being a human being in the world is one of the scariest things to me is living that way and everyone else knowing it and me not knowing it. Like, our capacity to self-deceive is incredible. Now, in this sense, it was just a bit of fun. It wasn't that big a deal. He sat around afterwards and he was able to be a good boy. But, when it comes to your finances or your marriage, right? Or your career. I mean, we don't have a lot of time on this earth. And we don't have a lot of chance to the people that we love. And we want to do well, don't we? We want to live life well. We want to love and be loved. We want to explore. We want to experience. We want to really take everything this world has to offer. But if we become so right in our rightness that we become obnoxious, listen carefully to me, one day you'll find yourself all alone. See, James suggests that being right all the time is not the right. There's a rightness, a righteousness that comes from God. But our self-righteousness, even though we're convinced of it, is not the right. We want to be right at each other. But the gospel is God wants us to be right with each other. We want to be right at each other, but God wants us to be right with each other. And again, even in a relationship, being right doesn't always make things right, right? Being right can oftentimes make things worse, right? Because you notice you can be in a full-on argument with the person you love, and you can win the point, but lose the person. It's like, I told you, I'm right. Where is she? Where's she gone? Where's he gone? Where are they gone? Like, yeah, you won, well done, you're right, but what your rightness got you is solo, you're alone. Because sometimes what happens is this is real maturity, by the way, sometimes we have to be willing to lose the argument to win the person. And the whole way through COVID, there was a couple people reached out to me in our church and said, hey, why aren't you more vocal about this? Why aren't you more verbal about that? Why aren't you taking a stand? Why don't you make a stance? Why aren't you using your social media to get your opinion out? So look, that's an interesting perspective. Well, what will it gain for me? Will I make a point? Will I win the point? But will it cost me the person? Because last time I checked, when I look at the gospel, Jesus was all about winning people. Now, he never compromised in what he believed. The standard never lowered. He never sugarcoated the truth of the gospel. But his heart was to win people. What's the point of winning the point and losing the person? Sometimes maturity is you knowing you're right, but being okay with the fact that they don't know you're right, because you're allowing them the grace and the space to be and to see things differently. Sometimes losing the argument to win the relationship is wisdom. But to do that, we've got to be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry. James concludes, last verse, therefore, get rid of all the moral filth, strong term, and the evil that is so prevalent, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. That word get rid of in the Greek language, which this first letter is written, is the image of taking off a coat. You know what I'm saying? That you come in from and thank God there's no rain today, it's summertime, and we're all roasting. I'm melting here. But back in the winter, when you come in and it's cold and you come into a warm environment, you just take off the weight and the wet. And it's almost like when you take off your coat, you're taking off the weather too, aren't you? Right? You're just a sense of release. And James said, hey, rather than continue to carrying this nonsense that's so destructive and so unhelpful, just take it off. Just take it off. Just let go. Why? Because self-rightness isn't just an opinion. That's my opinion. It isn't just a matter of psychology. It's how I am. Self-rightness, according to James, is actually a moral issue. Because self-rightness, what happens is if I'm always right because I decide I'm right because I believe I'm right, then there's no room for anyone else to be in my world, and there's no room for God. Because if I don't need God, then I don't need anybody. What's the point? It's a moral issue. But if I can come, the key word here is humility. If I can come in humility and submit myself to the word, not only will my life get better, but the relationships in my life will also flourish too. Because let's be honest, friends, who do you want to be friends with? Who do you want to be married to? Who do you want to work for? Who do you want to work with? Self-righteous people who are right all the time and love condemning and criticizing you, are people who love you, who are quick to listen, slow to speak, who really want to hear you and understand. Who do you want to work for? Who do you want to be friends with? Who do you want to be married to? I think we all want to be married and work for and live with people who are able to hear us and understand us. And we live in a culture, everyone's about demanding their rights, my rights, my rights, my rights. You know what I'm saying? And again, there's a rightness in that we have rights, and rights are to be fought for. But sometimes God calls, especially those in the room who are Christ followers, to lay down our rights to reach the person. That's what our, brothers and sisters of faith have done the whole church history. Many times they lay down their rights in order. There's a time to pick up rights and fight for them, but there's also times to lay them down, because you know what's important? What's more important is the person on the other side, not just my being proven right. Again, he finishes off this idea that because we can be saved. And again, in context here, James isn't talking about eternal salvation as in an eternal relationship with Jesus. He's talking specifically about saving you now. That when we get rid of this nonsense, we get rid of this filth, we get rid of this self-rightness, it can save us now. Because we can walk through life, or we can be dragged through life. And the truth is, we get to choose. And a lot of it is not about what happens to me. I mean, people are all about, well, if you knew my story, and I didn't have a father, and I didn't have this, I didn't have that. I was chatting with someone the other day, and they were telling me their story. I was like, that's amazing. But you know what the truth is? All of us have stories. Life sucks. The natural propensity to life is to bad, not good. We all have stories, people. But if we fall into this victim nonsense, always looking for handouts from everyone, we're going to be angry and bitter. And we're going to shut down and close our ears. And we're going to be too busy focusing on what I want to say and what I think and see and believe than listening and hearing and understanding and building long-lasting relationships that bring us joy. We all have our story. I'm not belittling your story. Believe me, we really love stories. That's what we're all about in this church. But we can't become a victim to our story. Your future is not yet decided. Part of the reason why you're in this room is because you play a part in the unfolding drama that is your life. You get to choose. You may think, well, I don't. I mean, I'm in debt and my spouse left me. I'm all alone. No. Those things may have happened to you, but they don't dictate who you will be. They don't determine how far you will go. You get to shape that. Now, you can do with God's help, and believe me, it's my advice. You should, because I believe God's plan for life is the best plan. But either way, your story is not yet set in stone. Don't give up. But if we continue in the same folly, then we're not going to be saved. We're going to find ourselves in the same funk over and over and over again and again. I was counseling someone the other day, and they were telling me about their life, and all that happened, one relationship fell apart, and stuff with foster kids, and all sorts of things. And I said, you know what it is? I said, you are the hamster that's been on the wheel for so long, just running and running and running and arguing and fighting and lying and throwing stones, and that's all you know. And now for just a moment, you've come off the wheel and you've wondered, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Like 5 years have gone by. What am I doing? And I'm saying to you, God is giving you a choice to go a different direction. Now you can get back on the wheel because all that you know. And there's a certain sense, isn't there, where our dysfunction is comfortable, right? Because we know it. We know, I mean, I come from a dysfunctional home, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know that world. There's a comfort in that world because I know it. But when I come out of it, and I also have to take responsibility, and I stop blaming my parents and blaming the government and blaming aliens for all my problems, I'm a bit I feel challenged. Like, how will I do? How will I survive? And God is saying, hey, if you take a baby step of faith, I will be there to help you. James is saying, hey, if we want to build long-lasting, fruitful, healthy relationships, marriages, workplaces, friendships, teams, whatever it is, wherever we find ourselves connected, and we want them to be good and wholesome and healthy, the first step is not to point a finger and say, well, they should be, or if only they were, or if you don't, or if you start. The first thing we should do is, hey, be quick to listen, slow to speak. I think, people say, what's the relevance of church today in our culture? I think one of the best things we can do for our culture, guys, whether it's a comment section on a YouTube video, a social media post, where it's on the street, in a party, around a dinner table, is that we as the church should lead the way in not making declarations, but asking questions. Help me understand. I don't see it that way. That's cool. But help me understand why you see things that way. And why is that important to you? That's interesting. That's not how I see it. But let me just ask you this question. And by being curious, and by loving the person and not the point, and being willing sometimes to lose the point in order to love the person. And again, I'm not suggesting for a second, watching online, everyone in the room, that we stop believing what we believe or let go of our values, because we will never do that. But you don't have to let go of what you believe to love people. That's what we believe is all about. Loving people. But if we're going to continue in self-rightness, always being right, always wanting to say, always wanting to speak, and not wanting to listen, then rather than having fruitful, God-honoring, joyful relationships, we're going to have relationships that are characterized by misery and bitterness and division and drama. Our life's going to be one long perpetual episode of Kardashians. See what I'm saying? And we don't want that. We can look at that and laugh at that, but we don't want to live that, do we? Let's be honest, right? We want to be able to be in relationships that we can be fulfilled, that we know we're secure, that the people that we live with, we love and love us, and that even though we have our differences, even though we have arguments, at the end of the day, we're not going to lose this relationship. Why? Because we're quick to listen and slow to speak. This is the key. So let me challenge you as we begin to bring this thing for a close. The band are going to come up. And this is again a 4-week thing, so we're only building, but I want to really lay a foundation here. Don't settle for being right, but strive to make things right. And when things are right, keep things right. Because like I said, all you have to do is look online, look at the news, look at the papers, our world is so divided right now. We come home from work, we come from college, we come home from just being on the bus or a plane or a train or whatever, and all the tension, all the division, all the news and all the arguments and all the they're right, they're wrong, they're lying, this, that, and the other, all the conversation about vaccines and social distancing and face masks and lockdowns and all these things, all this division. And what I'm suggesting is we can't change that and we can't solve it, but maybe we can make things better. Maybe your life can be just a little bit better if we simply commit to be quick to listen and slow to speak. To hear and understand just as we want to be heard and understood. And my prayer is that over the next couple of weeks as we get into this content, that would be more than just a message or an ideal, but a reality in our lives. And can you imagine what your marriage could look like, what your workplace, can you imagine what our world could look like if we as the church could lead the way and said, hey, let's stop throwing bombs, right, and making declarations. Let's ask questions. Because we all have to live in this world together, somehow, together. And we can choose. It can be complete misery, right? Or we can have the crack and make the most of it. So let's just stand. I'm going to pray, and the band are going to lead us in a song.